Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive?
Always ready.
Awesome. So today we're looking at this proposed podcast script, The 10 Commandments, a guide to living in obedience and love.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I was thinking, whether you've been studying the commandments for years or you're just curious about them, I think this deep dive is going to be super insightful.
I think so too. You know what's so fascinating about the commandments is how they were given thousands of years ago, like literally on top of a mountain to Moses by God.
Oh yeah, Mount Sinai.
Yeah, and yet they still speak to us today.
Totally, totally. It's like talking about a dramatic delivery, smoke, fire, the whole mountaintop experience. I mean, this was like a defining moment for the Israelites.
It was. It set them apart, and it laid the groundwork for their whole society.
Right. But how do we take that? I mean, that's so long ago. How do we connect that to us now?
Well, I think it's easy to think about the Ten Commandments as just like a list of rules, but they were so much more than that.
Oh, I agree.
They weren't arbitrary. They were designed to like shape a people, to guide them towards a relationship with God. And I think even today, they offer a way for us to connect with those same principles.
Yeah, that makes sense. So instead of just going through all 10, one by one, super boring, right?
Really?
Let's pick a few that jump out.
Okay, sounds good.
Let's start with the first one. You shall have no other gods before me. Exodus 20.3. Okay, so, I mean, at first glance, pretty straightforward, right?
Yeah.
But in our world today, I feel like that takes on a whole new meaning.
It does. It really does. Think about it. What are some of the modern gods that we might be tempted to, put before God? I mean, there's the obvious.
Yeah.
Wealth, status, that quest for the perfect selfie.
Oh, yeah, we're all guilty of chasing those, right?
Oh, absolutely. But it goes deeper than that. It's about what we prioritize, what truly holds our hearts. Are we so focused on our careers that we, neglect our families? Are we seeking validation through likes and followers instead of finding our worth in something, well, deeper? I mean, these are subtle ways that we elevate things, maybe without realizing it, above God.
I've never thought about it like that. It's not just about literal idols. It's about what consumes our thoughts and actions.
It is. Yeah.
Whoa, that's pretty convicting.
It is. It's a challenge, that first commandment, to examine our hearts and ask ourselves what truly holds the highest place in our lives.
Okay, that is a lot to unpack just from the first one.
It is.
Let's jump to another one. This one always gets me thinking. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Exodus 20.8. So I can't help but wonder, I mean, especially now, we're all so busy, always on, always connected. What does that even look like today?
Mm-hmm.
Are we all supposed to just go off the grid for a whole day?
I mean, the idea of a digital detox is definitely one way to look at it.
Sure.
But the Sabbath, it's more than just unplugging, right? It's about carving out time for rest, for rejuvenation, for connecting with God, with ourselves, with our loved ones.
So it's not just about avoiding work, but about actively doing things that restore us.
Exactly.
I'm seeing this in a whole new light.
The Sabbath is an invitation to step away from the constant hustle and just rediscover what truly matters.
Okay, I am feeling more relaxed just thinking about that. As we're talking, I'm noticing something it's not just, these aren't just random rules. It's they're pointing to something bigger.
Right.
Like how to actually live a good life.
You're picking up on something really important. They offer a framework for strong relationships, both with God and with each other.
Yeah, you're right. Honor your father and your mother, Exodus 20.1.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about, blind obedience when you're a kid. It's about respecting those relationships that shape us.
Yeah. It's recognizing that our families, even with their, imperfections, are a gift. And honoring our parents, it's not just something we do as kids, it's a lifelong thing. It's showing gratitude, communicating with love and respect, and valuing their wisdom, even as we grow and maybe go our own way.
That actually brings up something I've been wondering about. How do we honor our parents, when we become adults?
Yeah.
What if we disagree with them on things?
That's a great question. And it highlights the nuance of this commandment. Honoring doesn't always equal blind obedience. It means approaching our parents with understanding, seeking to see their perspective, and communicating our own, respectfully, even when there are differences.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. That feels a lot more applicable now. And what about, okay, this one is especially relevant in our world today. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. Exodus 20.16. I mean, with all the information flying around and social media and, everyone presenting a certain version of themselves. This one takes on a whole new level, I think.
Oh, absolutely. It's so easy to get caught up in gossip, to exaggerate, or to just like share something without even checking if it's true.
Right. Yeah.
It's almost like we forget our values when we go online.
It's a real challenge. We're constantly bombarded with information, and it's easy to lose sight of the importance of truthfulness.
Yeah.
But this commandment, it reminds us that our words have power. We have a responsibility to use them wisely.
So to apply this now, it's like being more mindful of what we share online, fact checking before we repost, and just like choosing to have conversations that are honest and respectful.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, bringing that same commitment to truthfulness into our online interactions. Yeah. And then what about envy? I mean, it feels like everything in our culture tells us we need more. More stuff, more experiences, more validation. And then we have this. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife or his male servant or his female servant or his ox or his donkey or anything that belongs to your neighbor. Exodus 20.1 a thing.
It's a commandment that speaks right to the human heart, doesn't it? In a world of comparison and consumerism, it's a call to resist discontentment and to find gratitude for what we have.
It's funny. I was reading an article about how social media is basically just a highlight reel of everyone's lives.
It
And it's
is.
so easy to start comparing and feeling like you're not enough.
Exactly. But this commandment, it reminds us that true contentment doesn't come from having more, but from appreciating what we already have and finding joy in the present moment.
It's like an antidote to that keeping up with the Joneses feeling.
It is.
I think we could all use a little bit of that.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that true fulfillment comes from within, not from, possessions or achievements.
Okay, so we've only just touched on a few of the commandments so far, but I'm already seeing them in a whole new light.
Me too.
It's not about restrictive rules. It's about guidelines for how to live a better life.
That's a great insight. And as we continue this deep dive, I think we'll explore how these ancient principles can be applied to our modern lives in even more practical and relevant ways. It's amazing, these commandments are thousands of years old, but they still have so much wisdom for us today.
I know. It's like they knew about social media and everything, like all the pressure we feel to keep up appearances.
Right, like take the ninth commandment, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. Exodus 20.16. Honesty and integrity, I think, are more important now than ever.
So true. With all the information out there, it's so easy to, you know, get caught up in gossip or share things without checking them. I've even done it myself.
It happens to the best of us.
Yeah, and then I feel terrible afterwards.
Yeah.
It's like my online self takes over or something.
That's an interesting way to put it. This commandment isn't just about, big lies. It's about, like, a spirit of truthfulness in everything we do.
Okay, yeah, I get that. But how do we actually do that? Be truthful, I mean, especially online.
Well, I think we can start by being more careful about what we share. Before you hit that share button, ask yourself, is this true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? And if you're not sure about something, take a minute to fact check it.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like we need to be just as careful online as we are in person.
Exactly. Our words have power, whether they're spoken or typed, right?
Right. Speaking of relationships, let's talk about honoring our parents. Honor your father and your mother. Exodus 20.14. I feel like everyone struggles with this one at some point.
Oh, for sure. Family relationships can be tough. But this commandment reminds us how important those relationships are.
But what about when you disagree with your parents, especially as an adult? Does honoring them mean you have to always agree?
That's a great question, and it shows how this commandment can be, kind of complex. Honoring your parents doesn't have to mean blind obedience.
Okay.
It means you try to understand them, to listen to their perspective, and to communicate your own respectfully, even when you don't see eye to eye.
So it's more about the attitude, not always agreeing.
Yeah, exactly. Recognizing their role in your life and treating them with respect.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. And okay, this one is so relevant today. You shall not covet.
Mm-hmm.
Exodus 20.17. I mean, it's like our whole culture is about wanting more stuff, more experiences.
It's true. We're constantly bombarded with messages telling us what we need, what we're missing out on. But this commandment is like a shield against envy and discontentment.
It's like it stops you before you even start wanting what someone else has.
Exactly. Instead of always looking at what we don't have, we're called to be grateful for what we do have.
Yeah, like be content with what you have, not always wanting more.
And when you can do that, it's so freeing. You know, it releases you from that constant striving and comparing.
Bit of a weight off your shoulders.
Exactly. You can stop chasing after those things that won't really make you happy.
So we've talked about, personal stuff, but what about the bigger picture? Do these principles, like, apply to society as a whole?
Absolutely. Imagine a society where everyone lived by these principles.
Okay, let's try that. People putting God first, honoring their parents, valuing honesty, not being envious. Sounds kind of perfect, right?
It does, doesn't it? But that's the point. It shows how powerful these principles are.
So it's not just about you, but about, like, making the world better.
Right. When we try to live by these commandments, we actually become agents of change in our families, our communities, the whole world.
It's like we're building a better society one person at a time.
Exactly. Our actions matter, not just for us, but for everyone around us.
Wow. So even though these commandments are so old, they're not irrelevant. They can still, like, make a difference today.
That's the amazing thing about them. They speak to something deep within us, something that's always true, no matter what time period you're in.
It's inspiring,
Yeah.
to think about how much power these simple ideas have.
It is. And it reminds us that we all have a part to play in making the world a better place just by trying to live by these principles, you know?
I love that. It's like we're all in this together.
We are. And that's a beautiful thing.
Okay, so we've talked about, like, what these commandments mean, how they apply to us personally, and how they can change society. What's next?
Well, I think it's time to go even deeper.
Deeper.
Yeah, we've talked about outward behavior, but now I want to talk about what happens inside, the spiritual implications of living by these principles.
Ooh, okay, I'm ready. Okay. Deeper spiritual implications.
Mm.
I'm all ears.
So we've talked about how these commandments can, guide our actions, shape our character, even impact society as a whole. But I think the most profound change happens on a spiritual level.
So it's not just about doing the right things. It's about, like, being the right kind of person deep down.
You got it. The Ten Commandments aren't just a set of rules. They reflect God's character.
Hmm.
And when we try to live by them, we're actually aligning ourselves with God's very nature.
Wow. I never thought of it like that. It's like we become more like God as we follow these principles.
That's a beautiful way to put it. The more we align ourselves with God's will, the more we, reflect his love, grace, justice, mercy, all of that out into the world.
So it's not about, like, avoiding punishment or earning God's favor. It's about becoming more like the one we worship.
Exactly. It's about transformation, becoming the best versions of ourselves.
It makes me think of, that phrase in the script, living in obedience and love.
Mm.
Is that what we're talking about? Like, obedience is a form of love.
Yes, absolutely. True obedience isn't about, blind submission or just following the rules. It comes from the heart. A heart that's so full of love for God that it wants to please him, wants to reflect his character, to live in harmony with his will.
So it's not about fear or obligation, but like a genuine desire to follow God out of love.
Exactly. And when you approach obedience from that perspective, it's not a burden anymore. It becomes a joy.
So living by these commandments actually leads to more freedom.
It does. When we align ourselves with God's will, we find a peace, a purpose, a wholeness that nothing else can give us.
It's funny, as we're talking, I'm remembering all the different commandments, and it's like each one is its own path to spiritual growth.
That's right. Each one teaches us a virtue, helps us overcome temptation, brings us closer to God.
Like the first one, you shall have no other gods before me. It's like, check your heart, make sure God is really number one.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing where our true allegiance lies.
And the second one, no idols. It's like
Yeah.
true worship isn't about outward stuff. It's about what's in your heart.
Right. It's about connecting with God on a deeper level.
And then there's don't misuse God's name. Like respect, reverence.
Exactly. Treat his name as sacred.
Remember the Sabbath. Rest, recharge, connect with God.
It's a gift, a time for renewal.
Honor your father and your mother. Respect for authority, our family.
The foundation of our life.
You shall not murder.
Yeah.
All life is sacred.
Every person is made in God's image.
Don't commit adultery. Faithfulness, commitment.
Building strong, loving relationship.
You shall not steal. Honesty, integrity.
Being responsible with what's entrusted to us.
Don't lie. Truthfulness, building trust.
The power of words, using them for good.
And finally, don't covet. Be content, don't envy.
True happiness comes from within.
Wow, it's amazing when you put it all together like that. It's like a map, a guide to really living a good life.
It is. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I hope you feel inspired to explore these commandments even more, to see how they can deepen your relationship with God and bring you to a more abundant life.
I do. It's like they've come alive for me in a whole new way.
That's great to hear. And remember, you don't have to do this alone. You have Scripture, the Holy Spirit, other believers to support you.
It's like we're all on this journey together.
We are. So as we finish up, let's hold on to this idea. The Ten Commandments aren't just, words on a page. They're living principles that can lead us to a more fulfilling life.
This has been incredible. I hope everyone listening feels like ready to keep thinking about these ideas and how they impact our lives.
Me too. And until next time, may you find joy and fulfillment in aligning your life with God's will.
And remember, keep diving deep.